All right, this is part 3 of the Introduction to Electricity. So there are two types of materials. By the way, just I want to add a footnote to the previous uh, lesson that we talked about, which is that we were talking about atoms and how they are comprised of protons, neutrons, and electrons. I just wanted to add that atoms are the smallest division of particles, right? So if you have, let's say, a tiny speck of sand, sand is generally made up of silicon and oxygen, the two elements, and at a very, 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 very tiny level, smaller than even a microscope can see, you have atoms, and they're considered to be the most basic building blocks of the world, of matter. Now, with that in mind, we will continue. There are two types of materials, and when I say materials, I'm also referring to elements. By the way, when you have one atom, it's just called an atom. When you have two atoms together of the same type, or of a combination of different types, is now called a molecule. So for example, if you have a hydrogen, and an oxygen, you may recognize that as water. So hydrogen is an atom, this hydrogen is an atom, this hydrogen is an atom, but together they form what's called a molecule. So a molecule is any time you have two or more atoms that are coming together to make something. Now, like we were saying, we have two types of materials. We have conductors and insulators. So conductors are atoms, molecules, materials that have a loose attraction between the nucleus and the outermost electrons of that atom, of the nucleus. And they can jump from one atom to the next. So they can jump from, like in this diagram, the atoms, the electrons orbiting this nucleus can jump into the next atom neighboring it. Now, insulators are the opposite. They have a strong attraction between the nucleus and the outermost electrons, and electrons cannot jump from one atom to the next. Metals are examples of good conductors, which allow electrons to jump from one atom to the next, or from one atom to the next. And materials like rubber, porcelain, and plastic are good insulators. Semiconductors are materials made from a combination of insulating and conducting materials, or atoms, or molecules. This is done by the addition of impurities into a conductor, such as silicon. So what they'll do is they'll take something like silicon, pure silicon, which is Si on the periodic table, and they'll put in something like carbon. So you have a whole bunch of silicon atoms, one next to the other, and what they do is they insert a carbon. So silicon, which is in a pure form a conductor, they add carbon to decrease the conductivity.